Hi, my name is Ivan Rudolph. Thank you for visiting my website and for watching this video. You may be here because you've Googled about near-death experiences, which interests me very much and probably is interesting you. Or you may have heard of my book, Living Beyond, Making Sense of Near-Death Experiences. I mentioned in the previous video some very important things that I need to develop as time goes on. One is that the near-death experience is a learning experience, which of course is different for different people because it depends what they have to learn to be able to make a sensible course correction to their life when they return to Earth. So they are different. The stages can be in different orders to the classic one that I'm going to outline now. The classic one goes through a series of possible venues, and but some people will go to them in different orders, or some will leave certain venues out. Just depends on the purpose of their particular NDE. Now, one of the most amazing things is that when a person's spirit leaves their body, as we see in this cover picture here, that this girl's spirit has left her body there, the very first thing she will have noticed is that all pain and fear have disappeared. And this has been recorded in every single case that I've read out of hundreds, that every single case, the pain and fear they were experiencing disappears immediately. Their spirit has left their body. And she may, depending on her emotional state, her need to see someone before she leaves into the afterlife, she may have a time of being in the earthly realm and be what's termed loosely an earthbound spirit, and she can move quite rapidly from that situation, and most people do, off into the other afterlife realms. Now, the closest afterlife realm would seem to be a realm of sensory deprivation, a realm where spirit has time to reflect on their life, and that's called the void. And quite often a spirit will go first to the void before moving on through a tunnel, say. They might step into the void but then need a tunnel to go to different venues. Some of those venues are prison venues where you usually get a grouping of people of similar issues and problems. For example, all the suicides, a suicide Angie Fenimore reported, and others have too, that the suicides are together in a single venue, and that they perhaps have the opportunity to learn from one another and be able to move forward from that position. Ultimately, what happened to Angie, and what I think most people need to remember at this point, is that calling out to God, just calling out to this being of light who you will meet during your near-death experience, calling out to this being of light and just saying, please help me, is a very, very sensible approach to take, and many people have escaped from these different rather unpleasant venues by doing that. Now, because the spirit doesn't really know where to go during these stages and these venues, quite often there will be a guide. The guide can be an angel, can sometimes be a relative. I remember one lady talking about her son who had predeceased her, taking her to the different venues, and so guidance is quite often provided in that kind of a way. And one of the ways in which the spirit knows where to go is by seeing a bright light. And somehow it's a bit like, I suppose, a moth is attracted to a light. Somehow the near-death experiencer knows to move towards that light. And quite often that light will be at the end of a tunnel, and they'll emerge from the tunnel into a wonderful, wonderful paradise section. of the near-death experience. And in this paradise section, which most of them find almost impossible to describe, you've got all these wonderful different colors, many of which we don't see on Earth. You've got just beautiful plants and all sorts of things of great beauty, and even some very, very perceptive people who are good witnesses. I'm thinking of Dr. Mary Neal at this moment, actually, have found it impossible to describe what they saw in that paradise section. It's just a different dimension in a sense. Yeah, they're trying to describe something of which there are no words, no language has yet been developed to describe it. And so it can be a little bit frustrating for them trying to do that. But anyway, the first group of people they meet in the paradise section are like a welcoming committee. And the composition is very interesting. It is of ancestors, forebears, and even though the person who the NDE won't have known many of these people because they will have lived and died long before the NDE came to Earth, nevertheless, when they return and they search through old family photographs or old paintings, they quite often can identify the particular person that's involved. Now, the welcoming committee has such an important impact on the NDE. I'm going to hold over to the next video a more detailed description of the kind of interactions that happen there or can happen there. The next really dramatic thing that happens to many, many NDEs, and I must say that this is regardless of previous religious convictions or lack of them, is that they meet this dazzling being of light, who is described by some NDEs as being as bright as 1,000,000 suns. You know, that sounds impossible, of course, but your eyes are damaged because you don't have eyes such as we use on Earth, which are attached to a brain, and the optic nerve would be destroyed looking in light of that intensity. The way in which you relate to different things in the afterlife is totally different in your spirit body to what we experience on Earth. Now, often the people find coming from this being of light a sense of love, a sense of peace, a sense of security, and they're really, really attracted by these personal characteristics of this being. And as I say, even atheists return and say, I didn't believe there was a God, but the being of light that I met there must be a God. And whether that's a very, very common occurrence. And many atheists, by the way, return and become involved in God's work back on Earth. Now, after meeting with the being of light, and remember that there's a purpose to the NDE, and a lot of that purpose is realized during that meeting. After that, the NDE can return very quickly to their body. Usually they're warned that this is going to happen. Sometimes that doesn't happen, and sometimes it just happens that they find themselves back in their body. But sometimes they're even given a choice whether they would like to return or not, and for family reasons or other reasons, some will choose to return. And so these are the stages that people experience in the afterlife. There are many other possible venues, and there are tours to different venues that are given to certain people, but on a simple level, those are the main experiences that people have. In the next video, I will return to the important interactions with the welcoming committee and also with the life review, which usually happens after the welcoming committee, but not always. The different stages can happen at different times. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, please click the like underneath, and it'd be good if you added a comment too in the comment area. And if you subscribe to my YouTube site, then you'll be told when new videos become available. I'd really like you to do that. And perhaps also it's a good time to buy a copy of this book, because it gives a lot more detail than these videos can. And I think you'll not only find it helpful, but you'll find that it opens your understanding and ability to help people who are confused by having had a near-death experience. Thank you.